Kimberly here. This is Macabish, Cults, Classics, and Horrors. We're talking films, series, books, and life, and we're starting right now.
It's all right. No, when I watched Final Summer for the first time, and I was kind of like live threading it on Threads and social media,
Oh no.
and then people were like, I watched it, I didn't like it. I was like, why didn't you like it? And then it's like, well, I didn't think it was scary. It's like, no. You're watching it wrong. I'm not trying to be a horror snob here.
Right.
This is the kind of movie where you just scream at these people for being dumb. Like,
totally.
we all know. You're supposed to be like, what are you doing?
Right.
Why is your back to the open door? It's like, that is the fun of the movie.
Dude, that thing you just said was so funny because we were on set and we were shooting that scene, where she runs into the cabin. And I was like, what do you think is going to drive people more nuts if we leave the door open or closed? And we just started laughing. We're like, dude, we got to leave it open.
Right.
And so I was like, yeah. And I'm a big fan of slasher films. And I'm that one who's like, oh, really? You're going to drop the axe? Like in Halloween Kills, when like Judy Greer's character, like she has Michael Myers like the pitchfork on the stairs,
Mm-hmm.
and then she just freaking drops it. And I'm like, dude. But I think the thing I think is so funny about that sometimes is like you're like, you want them to do what you want them to do,
Right.
but then you realize like, okay, well, what if they did that? Is that fun anymore? Is that,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like it's still like a roller coaster ride in a way, because it's like,
Right.
oh, like I had this because we played in these theaters in the Philippines, and this one guy in the Philippines went to see it, and he was so mad. He wrote this comment on like my thing. He's like, they were so stupid, and he said something about how like Lexi like got out of a perfectly good running sheriff's truck and ran off, and I was like, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. It's like, because I really try not to be that kind of a person who's a snob, and I'm like, no, you're wrong. It's like, no, y'all are really not watching this movie right. Like when
Yeah.
they're slow walking through the woods and going, oh, this is like a horror movie. You're supposed to be
Right.
pissed. You're supposed to be like, what are you doing?
Oh
Stop
yeah.
splitting up. What is going on? And you're supposed to kind of
Right.
hype yourself up
Oh yeah.
for the
And I think,
movie.
oh totally. And I think the fun of that is like when you kind of know the tropes, it's fun to play with them sometimes, but then
Yeah.
also to lean into them. And then to me, I was thinking like, well, there's a couple of things, and I think it's like if you look at it like how things kind of happen, it's like, okay, like for like kind of like one thought I had when I was watching. I remember I rewatched Friday the 13th after I'd not seen it in a long time. And I was just sitting there. I'm like, no one knows what's happening at all. Like no one knows. Everybody goes off, and no one ever sees anything connected to anybody dying. So like this couple goes over here, they get killed. This couple goes over there, they get killed. And then finally, we're stuck with like the final girl, who's like only final girl just because she didn't do anything other than hang out. You know, and she's just having tea or coffee in the middle of the night for no reason whatsoever. And the music's like, do. And so you as an audience know like what's happening, like, oh, like look out. And then the body flies through the window and then she freaks out. And then things happen. And I was thinking like, well, that's no fun. So I'm like, what if it's like this? What would happen if like these camp counselors see it and they know it, and how does that change everything? And so I thought that was so fascinating, where like all of a sudden you're like, things are now like different because you're no longer like the dumbass like going off to have sex in the woods or smoke pot. Now you're like, let's get the hell out of here,
Right.
like Mario, like, are you kidding me? Like what are you even talking about? Go.
Right. I love Mario. Mario is like the Kincaid.
Dude.
I love Mario so much. Like, yes.
Kincaid's the shit, dude. I love. Oh, and like Green Warriors, dude. Kincaid. I love Kincaid.
Yes, I love. I was like, he brought Kincaid back. This is
great.
Totally.
No, Miles is the best, man. He was an actor in Champagne. I love Miles. He's just kind of a wonderful person to work with, and I love to work with him on anything. And I'm like, dude, you're like a star, dude. I kept telling him, because he was working at this local local shop or whatever, and I'd pop in when I was editing the film, like, dude, I'm telling you, Mario.
Yeah, Mario's
He'd be like, yeah,
great.
whatever. I'm like, no, dude, I'm telling you, man, people are gonna, you're like the secret weapon of the film, you know, because it's like, because I feel like every film needs like, they kind of like, you have to
That's
have
exactly
characters
what
that
I
kind of,
said. That's exactly what
oh
I
yeah,
said when he died. I was
oh
like,
wow,
that guy is a blessing on a movie like this. I'm like,
oh
that
Yeah.
sucks
totally,
that he just died.
oh yeah. It's like, because I think you need characters that represent the audience, you know, and so you're kind of like with them. You're like, yeah, let's get the hell out of here. What are you guys doing, you know?
Right.
And so I think it's fun for him. I like because it's like, yeah, these guys usually they're just a comic relief, but they don't really do anything more. And I was like, we got to give him that. And the thing that I always felt like it's like when we made the film, it's like, well, I wanted to do it not from the point of view of because everybody's always like, you know, like in Facebook groups and stuff or Reddit, they're like, yeah, man, if I was that dude, I would have totally tagged him out and everything, and I would be, you know, like whatever, you know. I'm like, yeah, that's what you think you do.
Right.
But I've been to enough, like,
Yeah,
you know, like
exactly.
Halloween, you know, like those Halloween haunt walks where you walk in and it's like always the same. It's like you and your friends are outside and you're talking it up about how you're gonna like, oh, you're gonna be the first one to run out of there screaming, oh no, I'm tough and da da da. And every time it's like this guy who's like thinks he's the toughest. Like as soon as that guy pops at him, he's like, oh, he like runs over you and runs
Right.
outside.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do to these characters is have them be like they are they are what you would really do in this situation, which is
Right.
freak the F out, you know?
Right.
Because you have to think, I think like you have to think about it like, okay, oh man, we gotta go look for this dumbass Mike. I hate that jerk. He's been sitting around all summer long coasting, you know. Screw
Mhm.
Mike, but all right, we're gonna just placate Dougie because whatever. And then but then there's this slow creep that comes in, and then finally you think Mike's just out there screwing with you, and then like your friend gets killed in front of you. And so I felt like that was such a shock. And I remember like I did kind of a video on this one time where I just kind of showed this oneer because I wanted to the first like kind of big kill scene I wanted to do in a wide as a single take Mario going out there to yell at the guy. And then the thing kind of shifts a little bit. And then the killer comes and kills Dougie. And then everybody just panics and freaks, you know. And I think it's like one of those things where it's like it's so unexpected that you're not ready for it. And
Right.
then and I think to me, it's like to get to the point of view of like the sociopath in those killers. It's all about like control and power and sadism a bit. And so to me, it's like by killing that guy in front of all of them, it doesn't matter if they could take him out. It's more like he is scaring them to their core. You think you're a big tough guy, but you're not. I took your power away. And so I feel like that's where they all kind of shrink away and they're so in shock. And so that was kind of where I was thinking, like, from that point of view of how do you kind of, and at that point, it's like, and then with Lexi, who just runs up on this thing and just like, nope, runs the other way. And I think,
Yeah.
and for Lexi, she was a tough character because I think kind of how I wrote her as someone who was already kind of when we meet her. And the problem with this was some of it was like I cut 10 pages out of the script where the first 10 pages was her walking through the forest with Mike with the kids on this walking through the forest like hike where Mason kind of he was going to get bullied and then he kind of gets accidentally like he kind of falls to his death off this cliff, but we shot it during kind of the height of COVID. And so we couldn't really like kids weren't vaccinated, so I couldn't put a bunch of kids together. So I'm like, oh shoot. So I had my son like lay down in the grass.
Yeah.
And when he was like Mason or whatever. But and so it was just kind of more like I feel like we because of the COVID thing, we kind of lost a little bit of like the audience being able to get to see Lexi as like a kind of an independent, fun, cool character that you get to like. And then the
Mhm.
turn comes, and I felt like we never had that. And so it's like you meet her like in the aftermath of this terrible thing, which re-triggers and traumatizes her stuff. And so it's kind of interesting, you know. I don't know. So I think she's an interesting character because I think she's not what you're expecting in a final girl at all, you know. And
Right.
over the film, she starts to open up, and so I feel like there's a scene in the forest when she's kind of Peter's like telling her that stupid story, and then she's like, "Oh, like whatever, dude." So she tells him the story to kind of mess with him, and you start to kind of get a glimpse of her. But anyway, I could ramble about this, so feel free to kick any more questions my way.
That's all right. I like that the characters were normal people. In
Yeah.
the old 80s slashers, those didn't feel like normal people. Really
Mm.
attractive girls,
Oh,
really,
totally.
not normal people. I
Right.
appreciated that the black people didn't immediately die off first.
Right. Yeah.
And I could tell you we're really thinking about those kind of things. We didn't get, gratuitous nudity and sex for no reason. Oh, we got
Right.
the girl who tried to fight, which was great. She didn't
Yeah.
make it, but she at least got some good licks in first.
Right.
And that, man, I
Yeah,
paid
yeah.
attention to all that stuff because, as you might imagine, I've watched a lot of slashers.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the formula is the really attractive, skinny blonde, the
Right.
the teenage romances, the running, tripping, clothes falling off, death. It's the same thing over and
Yeah.
over and over
Yeah.
again. And if we do have like
Yeah.
a normal sized girl, she's just gonna die an uneventful death and whatever. They're not really a part of the story. Not really, unless they're like a victim of a bully.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
But this is different, and also you can tell people are just like I can tell when people said they didn't like that movie, and that's why. They didn't want to say that was why, but that's why. Because they're regular
Oh, yeah.
people.
Like what you're talking about, I feel like horror, has a diverse audience of like, women and LGBTQ and all sorts of stuff. And so we don't need to do it's not necessary all the time. And it's funny sometimes when people are like, I'm looking for the exploitation slasher. I'm like, do you understand what exploitation means?
Right.
It's like, dude, come on. And so I think like, yeah, and to go to your point, I mean, I remember like Rico, who plays Moose in the film, I sent him the script, and he told his wife he's like, oh man, it's a horror film, and she's like, oh, that's cool. And he looked at his wife, he's like, it's a horror film. I'm a black guy, like, come on, I'm an adult.
Yeah.
And he was telling me he was reading the script. He's like, and he got to the page where he's like, oh, here it comes. And
Mm-hmm.
he got to the end, and he's like, dude, I'm still alive. So I think it's just, it's like, I think it's just important to do new things with old movies and make them for modern audiences too, so anyway.
Right. If people want the
Yeah,
exploitation, it exists. They can go watch it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Those movies are there. And if to me, I sat through like some film festivals where some films had nudity in it. And it's a little weird because you'll have people like, woo, yeah, in the back. And you're like, yeah, it's kind of creepy.
Yeah. True.
So I don't know.
Well, further to your point, it's like I was just saying, like further to your point, it's like I was looking at doing an updated version of something like Night of the Demons, and so my girlfriend's my producer. She had never seen that because she's not really a horror person, right? Yeah. So I sat her down to watch Night of the Demons to just kind of give her a feel of what I'm looking for. And so she didn't really like it, but her immediate reaction was just like, I don't know if I can produce something like this because of all the sexuality and stuff. Like she's just not comfortable with it. And it's like, but like, I want to make an updated version, but I don't want to make it doesn't have to have every single thing that was in these old movies, right? Like it doesn't have to have the gratuitous sex or whatever, right? Like any of the racist tropes or sexist tropes or whatever that were in the old movies don't have to be in updated versions of them, right?
I don't know. I felt like this story was Lexi's story, and Lexi was kind of me. And I came out of a pretty abusive relationship with someone who was, based like a sociopath, and I went through gaslighting and all sorts of crazy triangulation and manipulation and all sorts of insanity. And I had really bad PTSD for a long time. And so I just felt like I wanted it to be a personal story about that, and so I think it just never felt right. And the cast were not going to do that anyway. So, and
See,
I
now I
just,
have to watch it again now that I know that.
yeah. And so, yeah. So there's interesting, because like the stuff I went through, for example, like there were lots of things like, because when you're being gaslit, I would be gaslit with like not just lies, but like props and lies and all sorts of stuff. So it's kind of like whenever someone like that is trying to get you to see something, it's for a reason. So anytime in the film when specific people are showing you things, they're handing you things, they're telling you something, it's for a reason. It's for you to get to see it the way that they want you to see it, not the
Right.
reality of it. And so I think, so I kind of think of it like it's a crime scene in process, and they are staging it in a way that they can go back and they can tie up the narrative so they can present it in a certain way to the police or whatever. So then, like, oh, yeah, this all makes sense.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's kind of like, so like there's those things in the forest, there's this other stuff, there's things that don't really connect, but it's kind of all part of what they're going to eventually show. It's like there were so many times I'm like, what does this mean? What did that mean? Like when I would go to sleep at night, I'm like whatever this person would tell me, I'm like, okay. But then I'd always be like, well, what does that mean? Or like there would always be something that never made sense. And so I wanted the audience to feel that way. But I don't know if that's a good thing, because now I realize that your audience needs to know more than you think that they should know.
Well,
so,
yeah, but it also kind of makes you think. And a lot of slasher movies, they're not about thinking. They're just mindless,
right.
right? So when you see one that makes you think, you're like, huh, I wonder what I missed. And then I don't
Right.
know about everybody else, but I'll go
And
back
it's
and watch
funny,
it over
like,
and
because
over.
I think I was talking to someone else about this, and I think the interesting thing about slasher films is the tropes are like it's like it's like the most rigid horror genre, where
Mhm.
people have to have the tropes, they have to have the speech at the end, Like
Right.
I laughed when I was watching Thanksgiving, because it was like literally like, well, this is why I did that, and she's like, why did you do that? Well, because of this, and I just started laughing because I'm like, dude, this is so corny.
Yeah.
I mean, that movie is fun as hell, but it was like, dude, and to me, I was like, I kind of wanted to play. I wanted to play with that a little bit, because one, it's like someone who's really like that will never tell you why they're doing it. In fact, they're gonna tell you that you're doing it, not them.
Right.
So when Lexi would say like, "Why are you doing this?" and she's like, "Well, I'm not doing this. You're doing this," because
Right.
that's the reality of it. And then the funny thing about it was like she was going to go into her monologue, like her grand, like, well, this is, like her kind of narcissistic, monologue of how powerful and amazing she is. But Mike, who's like kind of her, narcissistic sociopath in training, like underling, is like dying. So I thought it'd be
Right.
funny if he like interrupts her, like, dude, would you shut up already and just shoot her? Because I'm dying over here. But and
Yeah.
then through her narcissism, she just shoots him, and then both of them end up in the pool. And I thought that was so funny, because it's like knowing what a malignant narcissist is like. Yeah, yeah, that would probably trigger them to just be like, all right, screw this.
Right. It
They
reminded me
more
of Scream.
right,
Stu, when he's, dude, I'm dying here. It
right.
was
Oh
that
yeah, totally.
exact moment. That was great.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, I'm dying here. It's like you dick, and yeah, hit the phone. But I thought, like, to me, it's like it's the kind of like, like she was gonna get into her moment, and then we would kind of listen to her, which again would be another lie mixed with truth. And so I just felt like to me, it was more shocking to have her shoot him, and then she just moves on, and
Mhm.
like she doesn't care. It's so I think that it's just been kind of interesting to kind of play a little bit with some of that stuff. But I think, again, because it's like people are like, well, there's no explanation, so this is terrible. I'm like, well, but I guess to me, that was the thing I felt like. I always kind of ask like some of my friends, I'm like, am I too close to like my own experience to be able to communicate some of these things to the audience who have never thankfully lived through like a psychopath or whatever, or had to deal with, malignant narcissistic abuse and all that kind of shit. So like, you know, to me, stuff that's very obvious might not be obvious to other people. And so I brought up like Silence of the Lambs, which I just watched the other night. which I always feel is like a really good depiction of a sociopath, because they're funny, they're charming, which they are, but they're also like totally terrifying, and they're predators, so they're using all of your weaknesses against them. But the thing about Silence of the Lambs is like before you ever meet Hannibal Lecter, Dr. Chilton is like telling you all about him, and then Hannibal Lecter is telling you about Buffalo Bill. So your whole kind of understanding and context of what sociopaths are is shaped already by being told the thing. Versus like in our film, it's like no one tells anybody that this is a sociopath. No one tells anybody that there's like I try to seed it a little bit with like Mike being kind of an arrogant dick, and Linnea being kind of, but it is also my first film too, so I feel like there's things in a nuance that I feel like I can learn more for the next one, and also to think about it in terms of like this is a 24-hour period. It's like, okay, like how much do you really know in 24 hours? So.
But can I tell you something?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've had that kind of past too, the abuse. I just watched this movie again. Oh, it's okay. I watched this movie again with another person, a man also who knows abuse from a spouse, right?
Yeah.
He hated this movie and he doesn't know why.
Yeah.
And now that I know your past, I know why he hates the movie.
Why do you think?
We just watched and he's like, I hate this. I just hate this. I was like, well, that is a super strong response. What?
That is. Oh, I mean, I remember seeing some movies that made me feel viscerally. I remember seeing The Thin Red Line after watching I love Saving Private Ryan, great. And I wanted to watch Thin Red Line. I watched that. I hated this piece of crap. Oh God, what a bunch of crap. But then now I watch it and I loved it. So I think it's sometimes I feel like movies hit you in a way, and I think it's like there's a reaction to it that you're not ready for. And I think with Thin Red Line, I think there was a lot of emotion that was uncomfortable and traumatic. And I think sometimes movies that are like that can be like, ugh, like you don't know what to do with your feeling yet.
You and our last guest, Chef, his movie that he's making, Eigengrau, is about mental illness. I think it's freaking amazing that so many filmmakers are making movies based on stuff like that, because I think that's what we need. These movies mean something and we can feel it and we won't even know why we're mad.
Right. Oh yeah. 100%. It's like, there are times I remember we played at Horror Hound last year, and I was sitting there watching like the film, and I was like, I just got hit really hard by like watching Lexi's character, because I was like, this is like, she gets a lot of crap from people. I feel like this is the toughest final girl I've ever seen, because she dealt with she had to confront her own past with her brother dying, with all the shame from that. She had to deal with the shame and all the re-triggering of this kid that she feels responsible for dying. All her friends are dying. She kills the villain. She pulls her friend out of the pool. She does CPR, brings him back to life. She goes to the hospital, but now her biggest thing is she has to go deal with this guy who she feels responsible for, that she wasn't there for his son or his grandson when he died, and then to finally give this moment of like the passing of this ring, just kind of her brother's ring, to her. I feel like I just remember being like in tears by the end of the movie, because it was like weird, because it's the only time I ever felt like, wow, like I think it's just like you have to look at like, I don't know, I just have a lot of empathy for people. I think it's empathy for people who have been through those kinds of horrible things. And I feel like sometimes like the people that have come into my life after I got out of that were interesting, because I feel like they had gone through similar things too. And it's like this one random comment, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, wait. And then you click into their history, and when you go through stuff like that, I feel like it's like not everybody knows what that's like.
Right.
And so to find other people who have been through it makes you feel less alone, which is like all that person is trying to do is they're trying to control you and isolate you and keep you away, so they can continue to keep you isolated and abuse you and stuff. Anyway, so I think that's why it's like, I don't know, like I met, the people that I've met who really like the film a lot. I think that they kind of got where we were coming from with the survivor thing, with going through that stuff and being, because I think it's like at the end of the day, like I remember like finally getting away from this person and kind of winning in a sense. And you didn't get the best of me, as much as you tried. And then I got to do all these amazing things after that, like work with my musical heroes and you know lose all my money making a movie.
Yeah.
Have people on the internet telling me I'm terrible and should never make a film and stuff. I mean, it's wonderful.
Hey, you can't make horror movies unless half the internet is like, you are terrible. Never make another movie ever
Oh my
again.
God. Every single friend of mine who's ever made a film, I've seen, like my friend Luke, he made this movie called Revealer, and it was like, dude, there's one guy that wrote this terrible review. He just like, it was like he didn't just trash it, he like burned it on fire, took it somewhere to like the dump, shredded it again, ran it to I don't know, he just destroyed this film. And I was like, I just remember thinking, like laughing, reading this thing. I'm like, man, I hope I inspired someone that much.
Right. Wait, what is the movie called? Now I gotta see it.
Revealer.
Revealer.
It's a Shutter original. It's a fun film. I mean, Luke is great. I mean, I really enjoyed working on the film, and it's really fun. Bishop Stevens is in that one too. He played like Deputy Henry in ours, but no, like people will like your film, people will hate your film, and it's kind of sometimes it's tough, especially in the beginning because you're not used to that, because you'll spend like 3 years of your life or 4 years like making this film happen, and you're like, yeah, it's done, and then all of a sudden someone's like, screw this. Like,
No, but see, those 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 people get more people watching your movie
oh
than
yeah,
not.
totally.
Because we have to be like, oh, okay, well, this is terrible. Let me see
Right.
this horror show because I
I
gotta.
I had this one dude who like he commented, he's one time he's like, this can't have been what you were wanting to make, right? He's like, and I was like, yeah. He's like, no way, this was no way. I'm like, yeah, basically what and he said like, well, I'm gonna screen your film for free for other people to see. I'm like, well, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
What?
It's so funny.
Amazing.
Oh yeah, but I will say this though. I think that the cool thing is like is again, it's kind of going out and getting a lot of feedback, and you start to see like, okay, there's some consistent things like, yeah, we could use more blood and stuff, and yeah, like I think the characters could be like more complex and all of this stuff. And yeah, like it's my first time shooting anamorphic, and so that was a different kind of a world to live in for me for a second. But I think it's like you kind of learn from those things, and you start to see. I mean, shoot, like by the time the film was like done and out there, I was like, I hate this film. I've seen it 2,000 times, and I can find 80,000 things wrong with
Yep.
it. It's like, oh my God. So anytime
Yeah.
someone's like, they're like, oh, this is terrible. I'm like, brother, you like, don't hold on a second. Let's get a chair together and we'll talk about all the things wrong with this film. You'll be like walking away from me like, yeah, sure, it's not that bad, really, John. It's okay. I'm like, no, there's this other scene. Oh my God. So, but I think it's like, it's like going from your first short to where you are now. You learn, and we had such a crazy time. We had like these equity investor guys that tried to steal the film like 4 days before we started.
That's crazy.
Oh, dude, they were putting in like 50 grand.
Oof.
And they sent me the legal on Friday. And this is crazy. So like I looked through the legal, and I was on this like big long like chain email with them and some scumbag LA attorney or whatever. And I was like, I thought that they were talking about the money like a completion bond or something. And I saw it, and it's like copyright mortgage guarantee. And I read it. I'm like, oh, this is you guys owning the IP on the film. I'm like, nope.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like what?
Yeah, so I told him to go to.
Wow.
I basically told him to go to hell, and then we had a 16 grand Kickstarter. So I was like, well, we got 16 grand. It was finishing up on like Monday, so I'm like, we got to do this.
Yeah.
And then I had like some money saved away, and then I had like a couple of family friends who had I threw in like a 5 grand each. So I think we started the film with like 30, and the crew, everybody kind of took on like, well, we'll take deferred pay. I'm like, all right, cool. So then when we wrapped, I went and I just started working like tons of side gigs, and I would pay everybody from my side gigs, because you never know if you sell your film, if the distributor will, be cool and actually pay you for your film.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of that out
Yeah.
there, and especially with streaming now, it's even tougher to get like a good minimum, like an MG thing. But so I would just like work tons of gigs and just pay people down, and that was kind of how I made the film. And it was, there were times when like, oh shoot, like this guy I just spent like $4,000 on, like he stunk up the place with the audio, so now I got to eat $4,000, and I got to get my other friend to do the rest, and I got to do all the, like I was doing all the Foley for the film. I got like a piece of sod out of my friend's backyard, and I was doing all the footsteps and stuff.
Yeah.
It's very handmade, but
Wow.
it's just one of those things where you just, when you make a film, it's like no one else is coming to make it for you. You got to do it, and if no one is there to do that job, because I would, these other films I worked on had like $400,000 or $500,000 or something. We had 30,000 basically.
Mm-hmm.
And then so it
Wow.
was, so it's just one of those things where you just kind of never give up, and you just you learn from next time, and then I think for you, like when you see your film, because you probably watch a lot of your video like on a monitor or like your iPhone or something, but when you see it on a 20-foot screen, it's so different. So then you start to think of why bigger like why films that are made for the theater look a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
So I've already kind of learned like there's some tricks now, like shoot wider, less
Right.
close-ups, because now you're kind of faking this idea of production quality. Anyway, so I'm rambling, and
Mhm.
I've been working all day on this set stuff.
That's okay. It's good.
Yeah. People listening and be like, man, this guy's tired or cracked out or something, but no.
No, you mentioned earlier about wanting to have more blood or whatever in Final Summer. Just like a budgetary thing that you couldn't, like I thought it would have been like a stylistic choice.
And sometimes it was more style, because there were things like I was more interested sometimes in showing the actual event versus cutting in. So like when he's on the table, we're doing all that stuff. Like my dad was a paramedic for a long time. We had set medics from like the local fire department who were there, who I remember I looked at the set medic's face when we were doing the table scene. And a lot of people, like my dad, he was a paramedic for 35 years. They do it long enough, you get PTSD. And I could feel like he was in that zone a little bit when he was with us watching the blood. So I felt like it was, those kinds of scenes were real. I think sometimes it can get a little corny, like with the head gets lopped off and blood everywhere. But I think for me, I was more interested in the terror aspect of it, of like to go to the gaslighting thing. The thing that's so difficult about gaslighting is like you're being told what you're seeing is not real.
Right.
And so when Mike kills the sheriff's deputy, I wanted to show that in a wide shot. I never really wanted to punch in, because I wanted the audience to see that Mike doing this, because it wasn't really that he was killing him that was important. It was when he turns to Lexi and he is aware that she sees him do this,
Right.
and he's like, shit. So I think for him, it's like he immediately turns to like, he's the killer, Lexi, he's the killer. And
Right.
I remember when we shot that, because I was telling the crew and the cast kind of about what the film was about and what I had gone through. And when we shot that scene, I think that was when it really hit home for people that this was like, ooh, like I remember people getting like kind of creeped out by that. Like, this is different than they thought it was going to be.
Right.
Because that kind of stuff was like stuff I lived through, where I could have like this person could get me and another person in the same room to see two different opposite things. So to that person, I was the monster, and to me, that person was whatever, But the only person who was the monster was the person that was trying to get us to see what they want us to see,
Sure.
And so I felt like, to me, it was more important to show those things. And obviously, I think for blood is just more like a sense of, having them like bleeding all over the darn place and stuff. And I don't know. It's tough when you're doing everything too, because I was like directing, producing, shooting everything. I was lighting everything.
Yeah.
So I think you get very tunnel vision. And I remember Georgia. I think she had like a knife out of her back. I didn't even see. I was
See,
so in it, you know.
for me, I thought the lack of huge blood moments was telling me that the story was about something else. So I'm like, okay, this is not like the typical
Yeah.
gory slasher
Right.
gore porn. This is about something else.
Right.
And
Oh
so I
yeah.
started to look for the something else. And then
Yeah.
they're talking crazy. Like, oh, did you see he's the killer? I was like, this man is crazy. What?
Right. Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I see where we're going. So I'm gonna have to watch
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, and I think that's true. And I think, what's funny sometimes is like, I think, when you're making your movie, it's like timing is everything, and
Mm-hmm.
same with like when you're in bands and stuff. I mean, like I remember when I was doing this music documentary, I was talking to some friends who were like, yeah, we were in a band, we were like metal, we were on our way, got signed to this big label. And then 2 weeks later, Nirvana's Nevermind came out and we were like, nobody.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, we just happened to release the same year that Terrifier 2 kind of came out too, where everybody's like gore, So I'm like, yeah, which is funny because like I watched our film back to back with like Halloween, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, this looks there's like I think I made a joke of this one time like on Instagram. I just posted a picture of like Jamie Lee Curtis with her shoulder kind of cut, and I was like, yeah, this is the other shot of blood in Halloween.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
and we were always kind of going for that. Like I wanted it to feel like as a long lost like slasher from like the early 80s, even though it's set in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And but I wanted it to have that feel of like and that was to go into that kind of John Carpenter like lack of, it was just more like the tension and atmosphere was the thing versus the blood, which was never really a big interest to me, but I get horror fans now, so
Yeah.
The story did it. I was like, oh yeah, the music is good.
oh thanks
See
yeah
where
yeah
we're going. It was
yeah
good.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah
Totally.
that was fun. I mean, I feel like there's so many different kinds of slashers too. That you got your giallo, you got your that kind of lo-fi, you got summer camp, you got all this kind of more modern slashers. So I feel like there's stuff for everybody, and I kind of like I really do like a lot of slasher films. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I don't
So
know.
you think you're gonna make any more features?
Yeah, I got to make part 2.
Yeah. You already sound exhausted.
What's that?
You already
Oh,
sound exhausted. I gotta make
I
part
think
2.
yeah. Well, I'm like no, we've been working on this because I always kind of intended it as a kind of a trilogy anyway, where each film is about a different layer of PTSD. So the first one is really about fight or flight,
Mm,
and when you're in fight or flight, you're like you don't care about why, you're just trying to get away. And
right.
so I think that's why to me I always thought it was interesting that no one really asks each other, why is this happening, why is this
Mm-hmm.
happening. I'm like, I don't think they care. I just think they're just trying to like they're at that bottom of like like Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Sure.
like don't get killed. That would
Right.
Yeah.
like later on if they
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
chill, they can be like why. But right now they're like let's get the fuck out of here, kind of thing.
And also,
Yeah.
like, even
Yeah.
in real life, trying to explain the truth to people who don't know abuse, they're not gonna be able to take it in anyway. So you're
Right,
gonna
yeah.
be killed standing there trying to explain it to them. So
Oh
just
yeah.
run.
So if the first one was like really fight or flight, which is kind of why everything is happening and like running, and there's a lot of, once a movie picks up, it's like bam, we're kind of off to the races. And the second one is kind of more like the stage where you're coming out of the gaslighting, but you're confronted with two realities. One is the reality that you've been told is true, and one is the actual reality.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I went through when I was getting away. And that it gets complex because you're like, you still have a lot of like, well, what about that? And what does this mean? And it's a really hard place to be. So I feel like the next one is interesting and darker. And so
Right.
I've been spending much more time on the story. And then, yeah, I've just been knocking getting my first kind of vomit draft out. So I'm about 58 pages in. So I would say this can be a little bit longer than the first one. So I feel like right now it probably gets like 120 pages and then edit it down to about a solid 90. So I feel like the next one's going to be a pretty solid 90-minute film. And I'm excited because I feel like the characters have really popped in a cool way. I've learned a lot from the first one of, it's like there's this thing called wish fulfillment in some of and you'll watch it. This happens a lot in like your favorite TV shows or whatever, or your favorite movies. You're like, it's like the characters do stuff you wish you could do, and they'll say like cool things, and they'll do cool, like they'll smack somebody and like yeah, and they, it's like you watch it because it's fun. Like there's this show called Tulsa King that I got into that I loved. I was like, oh, I love this show. It's so cool. Sylvester Stallone. He's like, he's
so
like, he rolls into town and like, he takes over that weed store and he's just like, no, this is how it's going to be, and you're like, yeah, I'm here for this, so it's so fun. And I feel like that's the thing I started to kind of bring into with part 2. It's like making those characters have those beats that you're like, oh, that's awesome. All right, cool. Just fun. And so it's been fun. So yeah, I've got actually the Indiegogo coming end of March. I've got a teaser for a teaser I'm going to launch on Valentine's Day, and then the other one will come out at the end of March. So, and you'll get kind of a sneak. Yeah, so it's definitely more of a 90s vibe because the first one was 91, and this one is like set in 1993. So it's the final week of summer.
Right.
So, because I originally had it kind of set right before Halloween, but then I started to think like final winter, yeah.
There you go.
Final spring break, it'd be cool.
Yeah,
there you go.
Final everything.
Totally.
Think about the winter when you can see some blood on the snow.
Oh, dude. Oh, man. Speaking of blood on the snow, I was so bummed because we shot that prologue because I'd always intended to be set during the summer, but I was like, we got to have an opening kill, man, because basically the way the film was set up was like, we're just in this drama for like a half hour, and then the serial killer shows up with a mask. I'm like, all right, we gotta front load it, like Jaws, like you have your opening kill.
Right.
And Jaws is a slasher, so. But we shot this thing. It was like 10 degrees out. It was in this forest, and it snowed the day before. I was like, oh hell yeah, blood on the snow.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm like, this is gonna be so cool. I can't wait. And we get there, and it was like even colder the second day, and all the snow had somehow melted. I'm like, how does this happen? I don't. What the hell?
Of course.
I'm like, dude, it's 10 degrees, dude. Why is the snow melted? This doesn't make any sense. I was so bummed because I was going to have snow with blood, and that was all gone. So it was
there you go. Part
day.
3 is just calling you.
I know.
And see, you need a final winter. We love some winter horror, some Christmas horror. Let's throw some lights in there. You can call it a Christmas horror.
Dude, no, I don't know. I mean, I love the original Black Christmas. That's probably one of my favorite slashers. But
same.
I don't know. I was on Black Mold. It was so cold on Black Mold most of the time that I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just do something warm.
Yeah.
But it's funny though. Like the name was always kind of a joke because I was just thinking of how like Final Destination, they made like 8 of those movies. So I was like, it was kind of a little bit of like a laugh because I'm like, well, if I call it Final anything, we're probably gonna make more than one. So just
keep going.
Right,
think of it this way: when you're an old man, you're gonna look back over your 11 finals and be like, I'm proud. I never got out of debt, but I'm proud.
Oh yeah, that was cool. It's funny, like it's interesting because I think like after a while, like once you get your film out there, it takes on a life of its own, and you're just happy anyone's talking about it because there's so many films that come out that people don't talk about and that have much bigger budgets and stuff. So it's just cool to see it all happen. So, and then just to talk to you all, like.
You are doing a physical release for Final Summer?
Yeah. So we'll do one for the Indiegogo, and then we did get picked up recently for physical. So that's going to be coming this fall. Yeah. So I'll probably bundle the part 2 in with part 1, and I did make like a 3D version of the film.
Cool.
Because I'm kind of I love cool. I love like the old school. It was interesting, like how I never thought of it like 3D, but there's something like I have a projector in my basement, and I made this kind of home theater system for myself, and I love sitting there. I got these old like vintage seats, and I just love sitting with like 3D glasses on and put on like Friday 13 Part 3 or something, because it just I miss like that old school theater experience sometimes. And then when I put I just kind of I saw this kind of software program, and you could convert your film to 3D, and I was like, huh. And I tried it, and I was like, this actually kind of works. It's not terrible.
Okay.
And to me, I feel like it's like it brings back that vibe of the 80s films a bit, where, like if you've ever seen Amityville 3D, that's another goofy 3D movie, or like Jaws 3D. It has this kind of vintage feel to the film, where it's not super sharp. It's kind of run down a little bit image wise, but it feels of that era, I guess. And so I don't know, when I did that, I was like, wow, it does take me back a bit, and it's cool. And so anyway.
Well, yeah, I have a
Cool.
setup like that too, because I used to love the theater. I don't anymore, but I have a projector at home. I have and I have laser discs. I have laser disc players. I have 3D ones. And I mean, I like that feeling too, the old style movie theater feel. And that's why, I'm like, I'm going to need a physical copy so I can put it in my collection.
Well, it'll have the 3D version on that one. So, and I'll send everybody the glasses with it, and then they'll complain that it's not 3D. So
let them complain. Just tell them to tell everybody.
You can tell I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready to get with the new. But no, I'm excited. We've been doing a lot of camera tests for Part 2, because we wanted to kind of lean a different direction and do some different things with that, like some actual Steadicam for Part 2. So it's been pretty cool. I think it's just It's been, again, it's like, going back to like your lessons learned and all the ways that you can grow. It's like, I think, anytime like someone makes a film, that's a miracle. And then specifically, if you ever make another film, you're like, dude, okay, hold up.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard.
Yeah.
The thing I laugh with my friend about, it's like you're naive enough to make your first one. And then when you're trying to make your second one, you're like trying to think of all the ways you're not going to get your butt kicked, but you're still going to get it anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
You're like, well, maybe if I don't do this, no, you're still going to get crushed. So,
well, I'm excited. I'm so happy you're going to do another one.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. And I think it'll be cool, because I definitely think there are mysteries to the first one that aren't kind of out there yet. So, because that's kind of the thing to me that's so fun about characters that aren't like, you don't know a lot about some of these characters.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fun kind of playground to go into for Part 2, where you can be like, well, you thought you knew it like this, but actually, what if it was like this, and then.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that'll kind of circle back. And then there's this whole thing about the family that we don't know yet. So I think it'll be fun. There's definitely more of a mystery element, I think, to the second one. But and then I got some fun, like Tom Matthews is coming back. There's another person from Friday the 13th, and there's some of my kind of like some of my friends who are kind of these up and coming horror actors that are coming out are going to be in the film too. So I feel like it'll be a cool mix of like some legacy as well as some newer faces that I like. So
it's awesome. So excited.
Yeah. Sorry, I mean to smash that there. I'm like,
How did you land Tom Matthews in? Like, did that eat a lot of your budget, or?
Not too bad. I wish I would have shot him more, is the thing. But he was not too bad. I think basically going back to this thing. There's this South by Southwest talk by Mark and Jay Duplass, where I think Mark Duplass talked. It's like the Cavalry Isn't Coming thing, and he talked about this kind of thing where you find actors that maybe haven't done anything for a while, and you look, and then you kind of approach them, and that's why I did the teaser trailers. That I wanted to show the agents like we're kind of meaning business on this one. We want to make something like cool and kind of kick ass looking, and not lame or whatever. And so that was kind of the purpose of the teaser trailer, was to get in front of them. So I feel like that. And then I got to talk to him on Zoom, and I kind of told him about the film, and that it really was a slasher film about being a survivor at its heart, at its core, not about the killer. Because so many, like some of these slasher films are like, oh yeah, we're going to explore from the killer's perspective. I'm like, well, who cares? Like, what is interesting about that? Nothing. Like,
Right.
I mean, okay, sure, but it's like, why don't we just hang out with Jaws all day long and watch them swim around and eat people? Like, there's nothing there,
Right.
There's no struggle. So I think, I feel like he could identify with some of the personal themes in the film, and so then he said yes, and I was like, oh my God, really? Okay.
Right.
I'm in trouble now. We got to do this thing. So.
Well, we really have to do it now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But he's really cool. He plays a much bigger part in part 2, I will say. So I'm excited for that. And it's just funny how sometimes they're just like these things that happen in your films that like the way things end or lead or whatever, like set up something else in a really cool way. So that's all I can say about that.
That's okay. That's cool.
Cool.
I'm just glad you're just making another one. So that's cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you all so much. I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I should probably. Actually, it's fun. I'm on this. So we started shooting this movie on Wednesday. It's my friend Nathan Dalton. We actually met through like the horror cons. He's another filmmaker. He had a film called Shady Grove he was with, and we kind of met and we started talking. And we were just had a good. I feel like we just kind of vibe really well on like our realistic expectations of indie film.
Yeah.
Which is important to have.
I hear that.
Because you'll meet a lot of knuckleheads. You're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this thing. We're gonna get $500,000 for a film. You're like, no, you're not.
Wait a minute, Nathan Dalton, the Attack of the Killer Donuts. Nathan Dalton.
Yeah. So he did that one, and I was like stoked because like the DP on that one was this guy who shot this cult film called Hard Ticket to Hawaii, which I highly recommend watching. If you have you seen Hard Ticket to Hawaii?
No, but
it's wild.
Dude.
I have it on my watch list.
Okay, two things. Watch that one. Let me know. And then there's another one that I've been singing praises of lately. It's called Miami Connection. It's like
I've been wanting to watch that one,
dude. It's amazing. Get the Blu-ray. Watch it on the biggest screen you got, because it's like
I'm gonna have to get it.
Imagine taking like everything amazing about the 80s with like the kind of like karate films, and then throw like Purple Rain at it, and it's kind of like Revenge of the Nerds or something.
Oh, Revenge of the Nerds. That's hilarious.
Because there's these 5 dudes. They're like orphans, and they all go to this dojo, and they all do like taekwondo or something, right? But at night they're in this really cool like punk like new wave band, almost like and they've got these songs like about like like Dance with the Ninja or something like that. But it's so good. It's so crazy because it was just this guy who owned a dojo in like Miami, and he wanted to get into film, and he wanted to make a film about like the beauty and the power of karate, and so that was kind of his motivation for the film. But it's so fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to see it.
Miami Connection. So yeah. All right. Well, anyway, but thank you so much. It was really fun to talk to you both, and
yeah, of course.
Thank you for making some time.
Actually, absolutely, yeah. So yeah, and the movie that's coming is called The Haunted House of Pancakes.
Haunted House of Pancakes. I'm following their page.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's literally the funniest script I've ever read, and like one of the actors showed up today, and I was just like, oh yeah, like this is going to be a fun one. So yeah, it's going to be a good time. So anyway, I got 2 days till we start, but thank you so much again, and y'all have a good night.
You too.
Thank you, man.
All right, see you guys.
This is the #1 place for macabish cults, classics, and horrors. For synopsis, reviews, and news, go to macabish.com. Thank you for listening. Signing out until the next one.